Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of High School Not So Much Musical. This is the third episode in our three-part series with Mr. Tom Pike, who is a high school and college counselor and has worked in the education industry for many decades now. We talked to him about his own startup, Jump Education, and how it is accelerating high schoolers' learning to the college level at an early age and the benefits that come with doing so. Be sure to stay tuned right after this.
This is High School Not So Much a Musical, a podcast that takes you on a ride through the peaks and valleys of a high school journey. Here are your presenters, Nitin Jaladanki and Ayush Agarwal.
Yeah, when students are being required to kind of be drugged through a course over and over, or have one extended over the course of an entire year. And I can't speak for you all, but the students that I've spoken to, can say they lose interest in education. And the irony is that when we're working so hard in high school or college, the research shows that, say, 10 years after somebody graduates from college, if you give them an exam on the material that they learned in college, take a guess at what percent that they will have retained, that they will still know from their college previous 10 years ago. Can you take a guess at what percent they would know, they would remember?
5%, 3%.
Wow, Ayush, you're psychic. It's 4%. That's amazing that you guessed that. Usually people say, 20, 30%, 50%. It's 4%. So that's another reason that, with our son, we're making sure he realizes that, like, you know what, Orion, he's getting A's, it's kind of ironic, in middle school, he was struggling academically. I mean, not struggling, he was getting B's, he wasn't really paying attention. In college, since it's a mixed age classroom, he's not distracted, he pays attention. He only has 3 classes a term instead of like 6. So it's much easier for him to focus on what's being taught and what he needs to know. So he just excels, he's a member of the Honor Society now. It's kind of crazy. But I say, just remember, Orion, that, the academics of school are important, but they're not nearly as important as what you're learning in every other realm as you're maturing through your teens years. Like, as a mental health counselor, when I talk to, I've talked to thousands of people over the years at all different age groups, and it's amazing how many people in their 30s and 40s are still talking about the trauma that they experienced in high school. And these are students that were maybe not fitting in socially. And so what happens is they don't remember hardly anything of what they were supposed to learn academically, but what is embedded in our bodies, in all of our bodies, as we mature, is what we're learning emotionally, what we're learning socially, the sense of self and identity that we're establishing. Those kinds of learnings are embedded in our cellular structure and our psyches and our neural pathways, and those will be enduring, whereas the academics won't be. So it's sad to me when I look around and I see high schools that are so focused on the academics and risking the mental, emotional, psychological health. Maybe they're creating environments that teens are getting super stressed. There's like a third of the teens today are basically diagnosable with anxiety disorders. Suicide in the last 20 years is up for 15 to 19-year-olds. It's up 50%. Half of our teens have major depressive disorders that go undiagnosed and untreated. There's this mental health crisis in teens in our country, and certainly we can't attribute it to academic stress, but it can be partially attributed to academic stress and pressure, social pressures, social media pressures. So So when we over focus on the academics, and this is just my opinion, but when we over focus on the academics and then neglect all of the other learning that's happening, it's not really serving people in the long run. So that's kind of a little bit off course, because we were really talking about should courses be shortened or not. And I think the answer is yes, they certainly can be shortened. I mean, it's clear when my son has just gone through, in the last 2 years in community college, he's gone through 4 or 5 years of high school at math, and he's done. Now he's done with his math, and he's got, he can go on to he's going to be going on to a music performance program at the university next year instead of community college. He's supposed to be a senior in high school next year, and he'll have completed 2 years of community college, and he'll be in a music performance and possibly a joint MBA program as a senior in high school. So that right there tells me, yes, classes can be shortened in high school.
So do you think that like going to community college like early would like benefit a high schooler's mental health? Because especially like last year with everything being online, like it didn't really happen to us because we're in a private school, but I have friends that are in a public school, and I would literally like FaceTime them, and then they would be sleeping on their bed and their teacher just be talking, everyone's cameras off and their computers like on their desk or something. And they'd be like really depressed and everything because they feel like they're not learning, because like it was very hard, especially for a public school, to like switch to like being an online school. And obviously, like if you were to go to like a private school or go to like a college, right, instead of like going to a high school, everything would be a little bit more professional. Like the teachers, they would actually care about you more because they're teaching a subject that they like. So like, just to reiterate the question, do you think that like going to community college early would like help someone's mental health, because like they're not as stressed as like being in a high school where like the student to teacher ratio is like extremely low, like or extremely high, because there's like a lot more students than teachers?
Yeah, Rishi, it's I'm glad you kind of wanted to hammer that point one more time, because you bring up COVID, the COVID environment, how and I hadn't really talked about that. Pre-COVID, early college made a ton of sense for the reasons I've talked about, including mental health benefits, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. But now that we've gone through a year and a half of COVID, and who knows how much more of it, we're going to see. But these high school students that I know, I have a 16-year-old son, so we have lots of friends in the community that are going to a traditional high school. And so I know firsthand or close secondhand what it's been like for them. And it's similar to what you're saying. These kids have been spending 10 to 12 hours a day on their computers, sitting in these Zoom classes, and a lot of them, and once again, I do not at all want to talk trash about high school teachers. Having to switch your curriculum from a face-to-face environment to an online environment without really much planning or time to prepare is a very difficult thing to do. I had to do it in the community college, so I know what that's like. But you're right, community college environments, a lot of our courses were already online. We had a much easier transition to an online environment, whereas high schools, I feel really sorry for them having to make that quick switch. The teachers were unprepared. They didn't know how to make a class engaging, how to make their curriculum interesting in an online environment, but they still required their students to sit there. And some of the students I've talked to said, you know what, I am so tired of hearing my teacher talk about their pet, or just kind of like waste time. They felt like it was a waste of time in the Zoom environment. And then they felt like, I'm in AP chemistry, and if I don't do this assignment, it's going to dramatically affect my grade. But the assignment is entirely busy work. Like I stayed up the entire night doing concepts over and over in this assignment that I completely know already. And so this person I'm talking about specifically had strong like anger and resentment for having gotten drugged through a year of that, because this person is a piano like virtuoso already, passionate about piano. One of the best instructors in the country has taken him on as a personal pupil. And he said he was so tired from doing all his Zoom classes and homework that he barely had any time to play piano. He didn't have the physical energy to do it. And so he switched to early college. And this year he's thrilled. He's like, oh my goodness, I'm spending a third of the time, literally a third of the time on my academics that I was in that Zoom environment in high school. And he's still getting, I'm sure he's still getting A's because he's that kind of person, but he has now all this time and energy available to him to pursue what he's really passionate about. He's going on to music conservatory school in Europe at some point. You know, he doesn't need it. He's not being served by being drugged through, you know, these Zoom classes and Zoom environments and like busy work in a traditional public school, high school environment. So one of the issues that we haven't really mentioned is that the high schools in America, the public high schools, are tasked with practically an impossible job, and that is to provide good education for 15 million students that are all different from each other. So that's so basically what Jump Education in early college does is helps students have a choice. What environment is better for them? You know, maybe some students are doing great in high school, and I'm thrilled. I'm like, great. You know, I don't want to undermine high school. I just want to provide students with good opportunities where they'll feel engaged and hopeful. So mental health benefits of community college or of early college, they're profound, Rishi. Like I could go into story after story of students, and they're interviewed on our website. You can watch interviews there. But, you know, people for varying reasons, widely varying reasons, were suffering in high school for mental health, you know, basically mental health ramifications. Maybe it's due to racial discrimination. Maybe it's due to they're on the spectrum and they don't socialize the way other kids do. And it's just a nightmare for them to go to school every day. Maybe they're different in any way. Like kids are different from each other. And in a high school environment, teens at your age are one of their major things that they're programmed to do biologically is to fit in socially. We're social animals, and at your age, it's all about like exploring who we are and finding our people and fitting in. And when you're in a high school environment and you can't find your people or you can't fit in, that has dramatic, like enduring negative effects on your mental health. You start thinking of yourself as, you know, not capable, you lose confidence, you know, it's just this downward spiral of negative self-talk. So if you can get out of that environment into a community college environment where, ironically, when you show up on a community college campus as a 16-year-old, you have no work in fitting in. You're actually put on a pedestal because all these people of mixed ages are like, what are you doing here? And they're like, well, I'm in college, you know, I'm kind of in high school, but I'm also in college. Suddenly they're like a rock star. You know, they're like, how are you doing that? That's so interesting. I wish I would have done that. Wow, you must be really smart. Like they are put on a pedestal and kind of, you know, in a playful way worshiped, whereas in high school, they were struggling to just fit in. So it's a dramatic difference that has profound effects on people's mental health.
Okay, perfect. I think that we've had a really, really great conversation. And one of the staples of our podcast is asking our guests every week for a tip or any types of tips or advice they want to give to our listeners. We keep it very general. So, Tom, could you please give us can you just give anybody who's listening right now any general advice or tips or any insight that you have just so that they can learn from you?
Oh, wow. Thanks, Nitin. Tips from Tom. Well, I guess we'll keep them in kind of maybe an educational paradigm, but I always said, actually in college, I said to my friends kind of in a joking way, but you know, I've realized that over time it still holds true for me, and that is don't let school get in the way of your education. So what I mean by that is kind of speaking to the point of like how much we're really going to forget over time. If it's not relevant and we don't use it over time, we're just going to forget it. But our education is so much more than just school. So for me, I'm focused on balance in life. And so just remembering that things that we oftentimes think are giant, they're looming large, that means we're never going to have, you know, an enduring relationship, or whatever we're going to say it means, probably isn't that important. There's something that you know, I always like to refer to. Basically, there's a lot of studies out of Harvard by this research psychologist who's written books on thriving. Daniel Gilbert's his name, and he is, through his research, has come to realize that humans, you know, we all think we're pretty good at figuring out what's going to make us happy. You know, we like, you know, whatever it is, or if I get this one job, or if I, you know, get into this one college, or if I have these friends, like those things are going to make me happy. And what the research shows is that humans actually are profoundly unprepared to understand what will make them happy. We're actually wrong most of the time. So when high school students have something happen, like, oh, they bombed the SAT, or, oh, that girl they wanted to ask out, or the guy or whatever said no, their life is over. You know, I'm being dramatic, but those kind of encounters that we have that aren't kind of in that formula of what we think is going to make us happy, and then we don't achieve that, you know what? The research shows that it doesn't matter anyway. Like, we have, if we can have a balanced life, if we can pay attention to our mental health, if we can be physically healthy, if we can eat well, if we can sleep well, if we can have good social relationships, those are the things that are going to lead to enduring happiness more than, you know, our job or our school. I guess don't sweat the small stuff, you know, and most of it is small stuff.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Pike, for all your insights, and our listeners will definitely learn a lot from it. For our listeners, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of High School Not So Much a Musical. Please stay tuned for more episodes. We have a lot more down the pipeline. We're going to be talking to our British detective about how he put a person in jail. We're going to be talking about a lot of stuff over the course of the next few weeks. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thank you again, Mr. Pike.
Thanks a lot. I really enjoyed talking with you all. Have a great day.
High School Not So Much a Musical is hosted by Ayush Agarwal and Nitin Jaladanki. Narration by Samhit Padala. Music from Louis Luang Relaxation Cafe, Tune Pocket, and Infraction. If you like the show, please recommend it to your friends and family. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.